So you've been accredited, so you've been able to attend as a journalist several court cases, and you mentioned publication bans. So I guess without whatever you can say, how have you seen these being used in your estimation? Like, what's the why behind it?
All right, so I'll just correct something quickly. Yes, I am accredited in Alberta, but I'm not recognized by the Alberta courts to be accredited. They seem to not assist independent journalists, and I might be blacklisted or something, even though I've never had a complaint and I've never been charged with a publication ban or anything like that. I do seem to be unable to get my court level validation from the Alberta courts in order to be a full-blown accredited journalist within the courtroom. So I am a citizen journalist. My accreditation means nothing in the Alberta courts at this stage. But what I have learned are the publication bans are being abused in Alberta. They go above and beyond trial by jury, and it looks like Alberta is abusing those. They're actually making them a lot more difficult to report on than even the criminal code provides. And we now need to look at things like injunctions within the Alberta courts just to fight against the fact that we can't talk about when I'm sitting in the Alberta court to watch the Coutts trial, pre-trial. I can't tell you much about that, my friend, unfortunately.
Maybe you guys can give me your opinion on then. Like if we look at the legal system and how we think it may be stacked, or a political system and how it's stacked, and the media is obviously the propaganda wing of our government. So we're kind of it feels sometimes very much like a no-win scenario, but independent voices, as you mentioned at the beginning, and are kind of rising up and filling that gap. How effective do you think the public pressure is in that sense? Like how, what can we actually accomplish as independent journalists?
Well, first of all, one of the best independent journalists that I saw last year was a lady standing in her backyard during the forest fires out in British Columbia. And the CBC, and it was beautifully, contrasted. The CBC and all the normal sources were reporting that the police and the fire departments were not blocking roads and preventing exits from the fire zone. And this lady stood there with her iPhone in her backyard and showed the fire down at one end of the street and the police blockade at the other end of the street, and went up to it and eventually made her way through it. That was some independent reporting. And I think that that's illustrative of what's happened to the public's opinion. First of all, we know they lied to us. We know that the media in Canada have been lying to us for a long time, but especially during the last 4 years, starting with the whole lockdowns and all the rest of that, they've been lying. They don't cover the Detective Grush story. Very rarely will they cover it, and only when there's some little piece of information that suits their narrative, but they wouldn't dare report on the truth of what's happening and the actual evidence that's been heard over a number of weeks in that courtroom or in that tribunal hearing room. They won't report on that. Do whatever the government says. And it's so true, follow the money. And many people are waking up to that. There's still a lot that believe whatever the CBC and the mainstream media say, but far fewer now than there's ever been before. Andy Lee is a great reporter. Love some of the work she's doing. Someone criticized her the other day on Twitter, and she said basically, she gets more visits per day than the entire CBC during the hot hours, the scheduled evening hours. I thought that was absolutely true and really illustrative of what's happening with journalism. Now, I just want to say Reporters Without Borders, I just did a little bit of research on them. I didn't know. The Ford Foundation funds them very, very heavily out of the United States. And what are they like? Well, they like to fund depopulation initiatives They love to fund adult education, arts, and free speech, but only in the lefty side. Contraception, law school clinics. They fund all sorts of law school clinics, but only for certain subjects and only in the leftist views. I'm looking at it right now. You know, they just seem to, they have a political agenda, and it just fits in with that propaganda-laden display that you found from Reporters Without Borders.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they're majorly funded by the French government and by the Ford Foundation and some other like foundations, to me, that explains everything right
For
there.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
If
Yeah.
you allow me, I am not.
Yeah, I
an
found
expert
it. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not an expert in media, but I want to share my opinion also. Independent voices are needed, more than needed, when police state is installed in a country. Um, I want to share, for example, the experience in Latin America in 1970, when a dictatorship is in a country. The only way to find an alternative place for victims is alternative media, independent media. And I think it's capital, the importance and the solidarity that we need to have with these courageous people that are in alternative media. The other thing is we cannot only reply the narrative, but we can create a new narrative. There is a lot of anonymous people, regular persons that are struggling right now, that are an example of resilience, and we need to give them voices. So for me, independent journalism is the tool to bring the voices of people who hasn't an opportunity to talk.